Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. As the new Scholar Engagement Coordinator here at Prescouter, I am very happy to see a lot of our global scholars in the audience today. And for those of you who are not familiar with us, Prescouter is an organization that bridges the gap between academia and industry. Our scholars work on open innovation projects in order to find new avenues of advancement for corporate clients with the added flexibility of working from anywhere and anytime, all while completing their PhDs or postdocs. Today's webinar will run for about 40 minutes, followed by a question and answer session. During the seminar, please type your questions into the chat question window so that the speaker can respond to them after the talk. If you have any technical issues, please use the chat tool to communicate those as well, or email me at aueda@prescouter.com. After the webinar, you'll also be directed to a short questionnaire. Please take a moment to fill that out, as your feedback will help us to continue providing you with quality programs that meet your interest and career goals. So I am very happy to introduce our speaker today, Lauren Celano, the founder and CEO of Propel Careers, based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Propel Careers is a career development firm that works closely with graduate and postdoctoral talent to develop the skills and awareness needed for career success. Through seminars, coaching, mentoring, and placement, Propel enables the critical human resource connections required to advance innovation, as well as the organizations and individuals they work with. To learn more, please visit www.propelcareers.com. And without further ado, it's my great pleasure to turn the floor over to our speaker, Lauren Celano. Thank you again for speaking with us today, Lauren.
And setting this up. So what I want to talk about for the next 40 minutes or so is an overview of career opportunities in industry for postdocs and PhDs to leverage their talents within and outside of research settings. I want to cover a few topics including career paths, how to highlight and build relevant transferable skills. And I'm going to cover this with respect to a number of career options that I'm seeing people get into that have graduate level training. I want to spend a few minutes talking about how to identify roles and titles, because I know this is a challenge in looking at the types of opportunities that could be a fit. And then I want to give just a few pieces of advice in terms of resumes. Importantly, to think about how do you highlight all of the tremendous scientific skills that you have for different types of roles, like consulting or project management or business development or other areas like that. And I look forward to the Q&A portion, because I'm sure there'll be a number of questions around some of these topics. When I start talking about career options, I often mention information around, as PhDs look at opportunities, many of them sound very exciting and very attractive based upon the ability to utilize the hard skills and the transferable skills that you have. I often suggest, though, attractive to think about casting a really wide net and maybe applying to 30 different types of jobs to see what might be a fit or what could be a fit. But I often suggest to individuals to try and tailor that down, and perhaps when there are 4 to 5 different types of jobs, then it may make sense to apply. Because what if you end up getting interviews at investment banking firms and venture capital firms and large and boutique consulting firms, project management roles, business development opportunities? It may be daunting to actually prepare for all of those. And so some of what I'm going to talk about are different types of roles and different types of opportunities where one can kind of parlay and leverage their skills. For a lot of you on the phone, you may have anywhere between 30 and 40 years to work, depending upon how quickly you started your PhD program, how quickly you ventured through that option. And so when I talk with people about options in industry, I often like to think about setting a 30 to 35 year longevity in terms of options within industry. And therefore, I see a lot of people, and there may be many of you on the phone today that really love some sort of research or applying their technical skills. And certainly, you could take the view of joining in a research capacity, but then building upon that and becoming maybe a VP or CSO someday, where you're using both the scientific and interpersonal skills that you have. I see a lot of people start off at a technical capacity and then move into project or product management, and then eventually move into the commercial side of a company to really help launch new innovative technologies. With respect to life sciences in particular, I see a number of people join at the bench, move into clinical or medical, and then eventually into, say, clinical development to really be able to make a big difference at the patient side. I see a number of PhD and postdocs enter consulting, get experience to eventually do business development, and then eventually start their own company or become CEO of organizations. And then I've even seen people start in a technical capacity using their PhD or postdoc training and be able to move over into a business development type of function and then still get on the same track and become a CEO or start a company and become a CEO. I've seen this happen, especially for individuals that may get involved in technology assessment functions within a research organization, but it allows them to have a number of opportunities to bridge with the business development and commercial teams, and eventually individuals can move over in that capacity. And so if there are any of you on the phone today that really love research, but also love business and love thinking about innovation, there could be a number of different avenues that you pursue to get within industry and eventually get to the goal of being very impactful in terms of your work. But I think setting kind of a 3 to 5 year plan for each stage of your career sometimes may make it not seem so daunting to be able to really think about how your career could progress. I also like to think about industry roles in terms of research functions, which may or may not be actually at the bench. You know, of course, all of you are very familiar with bench-oriented types of roles, but within research too, I would put the development of technology, which may not mean you being at the bench, but maybe organizations or other labs to actually get things done. I would also group into this regulatory, product development, research management, or lab management for those of you that love overseeing and coordinating of activities. But I see many commercial roles within industry. And for many of these commercial functions, I'm seeing organizations hiring more and more PhD trained talent for these opportunities because they're finding your technical knowledge along with other skills that you have become very, very useful and very influential in the organization. And so opportunities such as alliance management, where you are the liaison between your organization and outside partners. It could be smaller companies, it could be larger companies, it could be nonprofit organizations, it could be academic labs. So you really get to use your people skills to be able to make things happen. Many of you are probably very familiar with business development types of functions where you're either looking at new markets, looking at new products that the companies could be involved in, doing the deals in terms of trying to figure out licensing, in-licensing or out-licensing, or looking at acquisitions. There's a number of nuances within the business development function, but there's some that if you look at half of the people in BD functions within industry, half of the people don't have MBAs. They have PhD and postdoc training, and they're experts in their respective field. They just love interacting with people and really like looking at big picture activities. I'm seeing more and more companies hiring individuals into communications roles. And so it could be communications in terms of marketing, in terms of website design, in terms of content, in terms of collateral, in terms of putting together presentations and press releases for the organization's technologies. I'm also seeing finance functions increasing, especially research finance functions where the intimate knowledge of the complexity of the research becomes very helpful in terms of thinking about budgeting and planning over a longer time frame. I'm seeing organizations hire people in an advocacy type of role where the scientists can interact closely with end users, with patient groups, with individuals affected by the technology that is being developed. I oftentimes, as a career trajectory, see individuals most move into a product or a project management function where individuals can use their cross-functional knowledge, they can use their big picture insights about research and development to be able to move projects along and to be able to make sure that the organization is effectively utilizing resources to develop and commercialize their technology. Many of you are probably very familiar with market research types of functions, given the work that you're doing within Prescouter, and I'm seeing market research or competitive intelligence roles within industry, often hiring people with PhD and postdoctoral talent. And then I look at other roles around operations, around sales, around specialists. So maybe you're someone that really loves training people and really loves interacting with users of a technology, and you want to find a way to use your scientific background in a way where you can make a very big impact in terms of the market. Thinking about areas such as, say, reimbursement. How is the company going to get paid back for the technology they're developing? How do they think about pricing? How do they think about value-added activities within the market? And so when I think about industry, there's many, many opportunities for those of you on the call to really use your skills in a diverse set of ways. And one of the, I guess, most attractive features of industry is that many of these roles, especially on the commercial side, I would say are newer in terms of hiring individuals with your background. But I'm seeing more and more new roles even coming up. And so you may see new evolutions of these types of areas over the next couple of years as your careers evolve. I also want to stress that many organizations have a few different types of tracks for individuals. There's certainly a management track that really helps promote leadership development, that helps promote ability to excel as your career develops. There are research tracks, so if you love doing this work, there are ways to really empower the organization. And a number of organizations have tracks to purposely promote PhD talent that may have started off in research into other functions: product development, market research, new product planning, competitive intelligence, business development, alliance management, and so on and so forth. And so a lot of it comes down to the people know what you're thinking about, what you're trying to plan, so that way the organization can make sure that you have the opportunities to really progress. And I should mention, I'll share these slides with everyone on this presentation, so that way you have them as a resource. I also want to mention, and I know a lot of you are probably eager to exit academia, to move into industry, but I'm seeing more and more industry-oriented roles in academia that can be very nice stepping stones in terms of making that jump from academics into industry. And so I've listed just a few here. Things like technology transfer. A lot of you are probably very familiar with this type of work, but I see a lot of individuals move into tech transfer and then move into business development or consulting or even venture capital as they build their skill sets and exposure in terms of business. I see more and more academic institutions and nonprofits hiring PhDs to manage industry academic collaborations. I think of Pfizer's CTI group, it does a lot of activity with respect to this type of work. If any of you love raising money and doing development work, there's an opportunity there to hire individuals with your training. Also in areas like communications, public relations, investor relations, policy. And so these can be very interesting opportunities and oftentimes used as a stepping stone to make that jump from research into more business-oriented activity, and then within industry itself. I'm also seeing similar things at groups like Draper Labs or Fraunhofer, Beast Institute, Pickhour, and a number of other nonprofit research organizations that may or may not be academically affiliated. And so I'm seeing them hire PhDs, of course, for research, but also for alliance and program management, technology transfer, communications, licensing. When I look at some nonprofits like Michael J. Fox or Leukemia Lymphoma, where they have multi-millions of dollars to invest in research initiatives outside of the organization. These can be very interesting opportunities to gain exposure and experience that then let you build upon your career. Within some of the nonprofit world as well. And again, more and more of these organizations are becoming aware that there are a number of PhD-trained individuals that are looking to use their knowledge in a non-research capacity. And so these can be very exciting and very innovative places to work and to be good career stepping stones. If any of you are looking at consulting, the good news is, as industries flux and change, the consulting firms continue to grow, both the large ones like these and also a number of the smaller boutique firms that may be 30 people or 50 people focused in specific of work. The one thing I want to stress on the consulting side is there are so many avenues of consulting. And so really it's about finding what are you passionate about. It may not be just strategy and marketing. There may be technical evaluation where you work at a firm where you're just focused on helping solve technical challenges for organizations that they're working with. Or maybe it's about merger acquisition. Who is X technology company going to buy next? Or who's going to get bought by a certain organization? There are firms that focus on financial valuations, intellectual property, sales, marketing, grant writing, pricing, operations. And so it becomes very, very interesting. If you have a certain passion around your, intellectual property issues within Europe, there may be a consulting firm just focused on that work. And so I urge everyone to think very broadly about how they may be able to apply their skills in this type of area. Of course, patents are extremely important. Many of you may have had opportunities to actually write patents or review patents. So technical specialists at a law firm or a consulting firm that focuses in patent work is certainly very viable and very attractive for organizations. Becoming an editor of a journal, and then of course, one of my favorites when I talk with people interested in business, venture capital or investment banking seems very, very attractive. And these can be great opportunities to join firms and use their scientific background in a new way where you're looking on the investment banking side, for example, evaluating the technology landscape, material science space, oncology space, medical device space, where these firms are very interested in hiring good communicating technical individuals to be able to help them evaluate markets for their clients. When I think about opportunities broadly as well, I think it's also helpful to think about what kind of organization do you really want to work in? And it's because it's not just about the title, it's about the title and finding a place that's a good fit with your individual interests. And so when I think about this, if any of you on the phone here and being involved in everything from research to training to managing collaborations to fixing machines to presenting, then maybe a smaller organization may be a great fit because you can utilize your core skill set but be able to purposely get immersed in a number of other activities just because of the size. There's 10 of you and things have to get done. Or maybe there are some of you experts in one thing, and that's great. perhaps finding a larger organization. That might be a better fit. So that way you can focus on what you do best and other people can worry about all the other tangential things to your work. Transferable skills. This is something for those of you looking at industry opportunities is going to be very important to make sure that you highlight the unique attributes that separate you from all of the other candidates. It may have similar academic backgrounds, similar credentials, but maybe not similar experience, and that's what makes you unique for a certain organization and a certain role. I also stress that all of the things that you're doing in the academic world for success, like the publications and the presentations and peer reviewing, the grant experience that you may have been involved in, different departmental initiatives, IRBs, IA Cooks, collaborations, teaching, mentoring, all of these are very applicable to many of the roles that I've mentioned within the industry or quasi-industry setting. So I don't want any of you to think that there's a disconnect between skills you're learning right now and applicability to industry. But in addition, many of you have probably had opportunities to look at everything from intellectual property to developing business plans to being involved in consulting clubs and consulting opportunities, writing or software or quantitative skills. Maybe there are courses that you've taken that could be helpful. For many of the roles that you're looking at, it'll be very important to be able to highlight both of these types of experiences so people can really see a story about what you're looking for and why those types of opportunities could be a fit. I also think about the toolkit in terms of transferable skills that you have. These are also extremely important and not always assumed. And so if you are a good networker, if you're the head of your postdoctoral association, that's valuable and it's something good that you want to highlight, especially with things about, I want all of you to think about what is your individual toolkit and how does that apply to what you're looking for going forward. I mentioned this before, but the transferable skills, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about this shortly, really help you stand out from all the other people that might look like you from an academic background. This can really help you differentiate yourself as hiring managers and industry professionals see your background. So why is all the background that I've just mentioned, why is it important, and why have I spent a little bit of time talking about the various areas where you could apply your skills? One of the reasons why is that when I think about applying for different types of roles, there's certainly a number of opportunities that you could leverage to get experience for those types of roles. It can be really valuable to industry. And so for this in the next 2 slides, I put together a few just high-level things that people will be looking for depending upon the area that you're focused on. And so I'll go through these because I think it could be helpful even to help people become more aware of skills you have now that could be applicable going forward. And so those of you even that are looking at R&D opportunities in industry, having experience managing a collaboration, whether it's internal or external to the university, whether it's with a nonprofit or industry, is very useful to highlight because it shows teamwork, it shows ability to interact with people outside of your background. Taking a technology development course and learning a bit more about how to actually commercialize or develop technologies is useful. If any of you had opportunities to intern with a startup, and when I think about internship types of opportunities, I'm thinking about the 5-hour or 10-hour a week situation that could be, say, nights and weekends, so it doesn't detract from your PhD or postdoc, but really helps you leverage what you've learned in a new capacity. And maybe there are opportunities to work with startups in your area of expertise where you help them think about the technology evaluation and things where you can really build upon your core skill set. If you've got opportunities to write patents or write grants or do reporting for grants, write business plans, all of these are extremely important to highlight for R&D roles in industry. When I think about business development opportunities, and I have an example of a resume that I'll share in a little bit about a BD-focused background, finding opportunities to do internships near technology transfer offices, or intern with a startup, or a business development plan, or a business course, and to show commercialization interest will go a long way. Even a 3-month part-time internship makes a big difference in terms of giving people a sense that this is something you're seeking, as opposed to retroactively thinking this might be a fit without any additional diligence. I'm seeing more and more organizations hiring individuals to use their technical or non-technical writing for communication or marketing or information dissemination types of work. I know for us even, we have a PhD trained scientist that does all of our marketing materials. She's very good at Illustrator and Photoshop because of the type of research that she worked on in her PhD. And some of you may also be very savvy with that. That is a unique skill set that you may bring to the table. On the product and project and alliance management side, finding ways within your PhD and postdoc to organize and lead collaborations, to work with people of different backgrounds. So maybe if you're a chemist, finding opportunities to work in a team of people that might be a bioinformaticist and a pharmacologist, that shows good ability to work with people outside of your discipline. And this is very valued within industry. On the consulting side, finding opportunities to join consulting clubs and case competitions within universities, business courses, leadership roles in particular. If you are the head of your grad student association or the head of the women's group on campus or the head of the postdoc organization, this is really valuable for these types of firms because it shows that you have an innate ability to network and to be very invested in building relationships. If any of you are interested in more medical or type of work, finding opportunities to get involved with different disease-oriented, diabetes, cardiovascular, breast cancer type of work, finding ways to interact with clinicians becomes very useful in terms of making that move in that space. If any of you are looking at intellectual property, technical specialists at a law firm or an IP consulting firm, finding at least one opportunity to write intellectual property for your lab or maybe for your university tech transfer office, review intellectual property becomes very helpful, and at least having one demonstrated that you like it. And you'll find out quickly if you don't, and that's also great because then you don't have to worry about that as a career path. But it'll give you good talking points when you actually interview with those firms. I have more and more smaller research-focused companies as well as nonprofit organizations hiring PhD and postdocs to write grants, administer grants, review grants. And so if you do like this type of work, there are many career options out there where you can actually apply your skills. Some of you may have had the opportunity to work with a first-time PI in either your PhD or postdoc. If you're looking to work within an entrepreneurial company, it may be worthwhile to mention that you were working, say the first postdoc hired a new PI, to be able to give people a sense that you are comfortable in that amorphous building type of stage. This can be seen as very, very valuable and very relevant experience. Some of you may like developing processes, developing SOPs, training people on techniques, quality checking of data. And so if that's the case, for regulatory types of opportunities, you may want to make sure specifically that you highlight, because not everyone has had the opportunity or the interest in doing this type of work. And one area that's often overlooked if I talk with PhD trained talent, and if I mention sales opportunities, I often get this look of confusion. I've spent so much time training in this technical area. Why would I do sales? Well, there's a lot of organizations out there that have very intense, very technical things they've developed to improve research activity, to make a big difference in the space. And they need people that actually understand microscopy or chemical synthesis or next generation sequencing or other types of techniques that all of you know because you're living and breathing innovation. So if you like interacting with people, if you like training individuals, the technical sales side may be something interesting that you can then use your skill set and actually find you really enjoy it. Lastly, I'm talking with more and more individuals that are thinking about policy as an avenue. And actually, to be honest, there's a huge need for people that can communicate science effectively to get involved with policy initiatives. And there's lots of opportunities from AAAS fellowships to other types of opportunities to engage, advocated for scientists. If you got involved with advocacy committees through a group like Association for Women in Science, or if you got involved with policies to improve some sort of aspect of the PhD or postdoctoral experience, this can be a nice avenue to break into the policy end of things. Technology transfer side, so I know a number of universities that I've interacted with in the US have set up technology transfer opportunities for US and also international individuals. So that way it allows them to have opportunities to gain exposure. Maybe it's 5 hours a week for 6 months. It doesn't interfere with some of the issues that folks may have when they're coming from international areas, but as a way to expose individuals to technology creation. Teaching is always valued, whether you go into teaching roles or roles that may involve medical science liaison or training or communication types of roles. Teaching experience can be extremely valuable for that. Many of you may have backgrounds related more to data science, very big data analytics, very quantitative, very numbers heavy. It seems like every company from Burberry to Google to Apple to biotech companies are hiring people with these types of skills to be able to help them interpret market information or just data itself to try to make decisions based upon information. And then, of course, many of you will proceed either initially or as your career develops into management types of roles. And so finding ways in your PhD or postdoc to gain experience managing individuals. Some are interns, grad students, visiting fellows, whatever it might be, very useful as your career develops. I can't talk enough about leadership skills. And so whatever you pursue in terms of career endeavor, finding ways to take a leadership role in your institution or in a networking group relevant or professional society relevant to your area of interest becomes very valuable to show that you're someone that also cares about others and not just only about the work that you do. Side. Many things are valued, of course, presentations and teaching, but many of you have gotten opportunities to write grants or maybe you review for certain journals. These are very useful to highlight. If any of you are thinking about communications roles, marketing, investor relations, public relations, you'll probably have to have a few non-technical written articles that you can share. And so it's good to think about developing these types of materials that aren't just the nature papers that you've gotten accepted. I want to talk just for a few minutes about how do we start identifying roles and titles and thinking about, of all of the details that I've shared, which opportunities could be the best fit for each of you to consider. So the first thing is, I love LinkedIn, and I don't know how many of you have used the advanced search feature on LinkedIn, but if you haven't used it yet, it can be a treasure trove of information. right next to where you search for people's names, there's a small button called Advanced. You come to a page that looks like this, where you can basically search by whatever you want, certain keywords like technology commercialization, and see who in your network has that in their profile. Or you can be specific about certain titles, intellectual property, consultant, scientist, alliance manager, business development, whatever you're interested in. Search by title, search by connections and relationships. First, second, and group members are open to everyone for free. You don't have to upgrade to get that. I suggest joining, if you're interested in certain areas, maybe join certain groups that have that focus, whether it's business development or consulting or whatever areas of interest. That way you have visibility into some of those people. And if you join some of the larger groups, it may help in terms of just exposure about what these types of people do. So if I run a quick search on scientists using this, I'll get to a few people, well, I think about over 1,000 people, but you can then look at individuals' profiles and see at a certain company, what does that job mean? What is the medical affairs person or the new product planning person or the market research person? What do they actually do? And that might give you a bit of insight, one, about certain roles, but two, then you'll be able to see, well, who could you contact at certain organizations to learn more about these types of opportunities, to become more informed as to whether this will be a good fit for you. The other thing I really value, and many of you are probably doing this, but if you're not, is informational interviewing. It's not a job interview, but more discussion about topics such as, what do you do? What's your job like? What's your company like? How do you progress in the career? If you know you want to be head of investment, how do you make that happen? Or as many of you are probably thinking, well, how do I get in? You know, is there a certain title for this thing I'm interested in? Is there a certain networking organization I should be aware of? Is there, you know, what are the must-have versus nice-to-have skills? What's the salary like for someone moving into a certain role? But finding opportunities to really engage with people and learn more about what it is that people do, and to read job descriptions and be able to actually infer, what does that mean? And when you think about connecting to people, LinkedIn is extremely valuable, as is thinking about people you worked with, alumni organizations, events and conferences specific to areas of interest. And I listed just a few here, but for example, if you were interested in technology transfer, there's an entire group just focused on. If you're interested in licensing, there's a licensing executive society or data science society. There's thousands of societies out there for many areas of interest. And so the key is finding out about those and then trying to see if you can connect with people to learn more about a certain area. I want to give a few thoughts on resumes just to purposely highlight how you could highlight different information for different types of roles that you're looking for. Many of you are very well familiar with the CV format, and so I'm assuming all of you are not sending this to organizations when you are applying. You're sending something that looks a little bit more like this resume. And I'm not going to go in a ton of detail here, but I'll highlight a few key points where you've got a summary, you've got details about your work, you may have a technique section, you may have other details, so that way people can get a better sense of what you've actually worked on and been involved with. For example, this is a resume for a research role in an entrepreneurial company where the scientist spends about half his time doing research and half his time interacting with collaborators, interacting with funding agencies, leading a team of people. And so this version, dual listing, some details about research background in terms of point-of-care diagnostics, mentions a few things about the diagnostic sensor winner at a healthcare innovation and commercialization workshop, so it shows kind of the entrepreneurial side of research. In the first postdoc, mentioned a bit about what the individual was working on, and also mentioned that this individual formed a startup around this idea in the university business plan competition. And in the PhD, mentioned about working on a DoD-funded project where this person actually did the annual reporting for that. So we've got a very nice research and non-research background to be able to apply to smaller companies going forward. Smaller companies love the entrepreneurial scientists very interested in commercializing technology. Compare this to an individual that was looking for more of a project management role. So they didn't want to do any bench work, was kind of tired of that, like most people I speak with, and wanted to get involved with managing alliances and collaborations. And so for this individual, she chose to highlight in her resume collaborations she's been involved in, a little bit about the science, but mostly about a few business courses, presentation work. And if you look at the presentation list, you'd see about 30 conference presentations during her PhD, which is an awful lot. But it's drastically different than the previous one. For this next version, and this is a little bit confusing, but I'll just mention briefly, as a PhD student, this individual was in a PhD program in 2005 to 2010. But this person decided to showcase two different sections on the resume to highlight business experience versus research experience. And so as a PhD student, this person interned in the tech transfer office using his scientific background to help look at technologies the university wanted to out-license. Also consulted for a small consulting firm, consulted for a venture capital firm, and then advised a small company. These were all opportunities that were about 5 to 10 hours per week for a few months in duration, not full-time, of course, but it built off of the research, and it led to a nice profile in terms of business. Now this person does business development within a larger organization. And lastly, this is a little bit hard to read, but if any of you are thinking about consulting as a career, it's hard sometimes to drill down your experience to a one-page, very succinct resume. But this person lists business experience, intern at a tech transfer office, at a consulting firm, a little bit of team and leadership experience, and then listed the education. So very concise, but very much focused on showcasing the interpersonal and the business experience. And if any of you are interested in examples of these, I can certainly send those to you that you can use for your purposes. So lastly, I just have 2 more slides and then we'll dive into questions. When I think about job search timeframes for industry roles, and even for the industry-ish types of roles within academic settings, like the development office roles and the ones in licensing, say for a nonprofit, typically when a role is posted, they want people in 3 months. And so things move very in terms of the interview and hopefully offer process. If any of you are looking at, if your PhDs right now, looking at fellowships at AAAS, they have a policy fellowship. They also have a communications fellowship to help get scientists more involved in communicating of their science. You have to be aware of certain deadlines, November 1st to actually apply, and then you start in September of 2016. For a lot of the large consulting, Deloitte, McKinsey's, BCG's, and a lot of the large investment banks, they're on sometimes very rigid schedule. Apply in the fall, start in the spring time frame. So you want to be very aware of this so you can get your applications in while they're still involved in the recruiting cycles. For some of the boutique, the 20 to 30, 50-person consulting firms or investment banks, they may or may not have the very strict apply in fall, start in the spring. So you want to make sure as you're doing your research, you're aware. And if any of you are interested in venture capital, joining NEA or Kleiner Perkins or Third Rock or other places like that, networking is probably the best way to get familiar with and aware of opportunities in that space. They don't often post jobs at the entry level. Here are my contact details. I'm more than happy to share the slides, and let's dive into some of the questions that all of you have.
Thanks so much, Lauren. So the questions that the audience had will show up in the chat window. They won't be able to have audio capabilities, but if you want to go over the ones that have been asked through the chat window, and then other people can enter in questions as well.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So let's see. Okay, so I guess the first question is, Michelle would like to learn a bit more about the advocacy role. And so when I think about advocacy functions, as an example, the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and they may hire a PhD-trained individual focused in type 1 diabetes to be able to be that liaison between patients, between families, between doctors, to be able to take feedback from the community of users to help inform new research endeavors and to help inform activity on that end. I know a number of companies also, the Sanofi's, Biogen's, Vertex's, pretty much anyone with commercial stage products have people in their advocacy groups that interact with clinicians, families, patients. They do a number of scientific events. They do a lot of educational events. They attend a number of conferences to make people aware of what's happening in this space. And so if you'd like to talk a little bit more about that, feel free to email me and I can share some additional details with you. The next question is, what do you think are some of those of us with an academic background can gain as we move ahead in our career? I mean, I think one of the biggest skills is the ability to effectively communicate the work that you do to both a technical audience as well as audience, and for a few reasons. One, it can help inform policy decisions. It can help really enhance the awareness of the great work that many of you are doing. But I find oftentimes scientists have a very hard time communicating, especially non-technically, about the work. In addition to that, industry thrives on team-oriented settings. So finding opportunities, whether it's in your research or maybe through a nonprofit you're involved in or through an outside networking organization you're involved in, finding ways to work with people of different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, different technical backgrounds, different levels. So, CEOs down to research associates. That'll be a skill that you'll be able to apply every day throughout your career. Certainly, certifications individuals can get with respect to clinical research or with respect to intellectual property or regulatory or project management. There are certainly certifications on certain data programs and analysis programs. The key is sometimes, for example, getting a project management certification doesn't mean that you'll automatically get hired in a project management capacity. So it's the certification can show a lot of interest in that area, which can open up the conversation. But ultimately, I think finding ways to try to use those skill sets within your either academic or non-academic setting will help the most in terms of showcasing what you've been involved with. I've seen a number of PhD-trained talent get opportunities to write or review patents because maybe the work they do in their lab is very, very translational, very commercializable. And so by default, the PhD student working in that project may have had opportunities to either contribute to a patent or to write even the whole patent, depending upon how large the lab and how many resources they have. I don't know of PhDs in particular that have taken the patent agent certification while a PhD. I guess it may be feasible. Most wait until they're done and until they, I guess, make sure that that's the career path of interest for them. But certainly, this is a growing area, and many of the law firms that focus within patent work are growing, and many of the technology companies are hiring in-house patent counsel, whether it's patent agents or attorneys, to be able to help protect their intellectual property. So this is certainly a growing area and one that I continue to see growth in. and within some of the universities in Boston that I work with, for a lot of the next question is around international postdocs and basically how can they get experiences with this type of work, because it does become challenging from a pay perspective and from a time perspective. I've seen a number of universities in Boston, where I am from, that are developing internships within the university, within tech transfer, within compliance, within the communications office, within the public relations office, to be able to expose international postdocs and PhDs to experiences that can help them build their career. And so oftentimes there are opportunities for international postdocs and PhDs to intern for a short amount of time on campus. And so I'm seeing a number of universities open up more opportunities to allow them to gain experience without having to go outside. I've also seen international postdocs and PhDs volunteer with some nonprofit organizations to gain experience also. So there may not be pay there, but there is opportunity to gain exposure, which is very valuable as things progress. One thing I will caution all of you is that for a lot of these part-time, flexible, 5-hour-a-week, 6-month internships, they're oftentimes not posted. And so what I suggest individuals to do is reach out to organizations that are relevant to your area of expertise and see if they need help. And so one example would be, well, if you were a material scientist and if you were interested in learning more about intellectual property or technology commercialization, maybe you reach out to a company, a small startup doing work in material science relevant to your area of interest, and see if they need help in terms of looking at landscape or looking at performing some market research or helping with patent evaluations or looking at new areas for partnership. You may find that companies would love to have help. They just didn't know that you existed and didn't know that you'd be open to doing that. So for a lot of these startup internships, not directly, and just seeing if people need assistance will probably help enable you to open up new opportunities that could be a good fit for yourself. The next question is around, does Propel offer one-on-one advising about some of these issues? We do. We work with a number of PhD and postdocs on tailoring resumes, on interview preparation, on guidance around how do we even start thinking about what do I do, what are the skills needed, how do I build my PhD or postdoc to make me a competitive candidate for different types of roles. And so for any of you that are interested, email me and I can send you more details about that. There are other questions, other things that I haven't gone over that some of you are curious about?
Okay. I'll give one last call for questions. If you do have any questions, feel free to type them in. See some more typing. I'll give everyone a few more seconds to enter in any questions that they have. We have a few more minutes left for our hour, so if you do have any, feel free to type it in. Okay. And if there are no more questions, Lauren, I just want to take this time again to thank you so much for your time. Oh, there is one more question. It looks like from Michio. Tell us about the best way to prepare for a consulting role.
Yes, great question. Okay, so the first thing I would suggest for any of you interested in consulting, one of the first things that you should do is start setting up informational interviews with people in consulting for a few reasons. One, a lot of the companies hire through networking, through connections, and so connect with people at Deloitte's or McKinsey's or smaller firms, Analysis Group, Simon Kutcher. There's a whole range of different places that'll help a lot in terms of showing proactiveness and interest in terms of that space. The other reason why it's helpful to try to talk with people first before you put a plan in place to dive into this space is that you may be able to find some insight about, at firm X, what are the top 3 things they look for? Because it might be different than at firm Y and at firm Z. And so that'll help you in terms of putting things in place. Certainly, if your university has a consulting club, getting involved with that will be very beneficial because you'll often have case interview preparations. You'll have opportunities to connect with places to learn more about that. Getting involved in organizations like Pre-Scouter is wonderful because you gain real-time experience looking at markets and looking at assessments and landscapes. If your university does not have a consulting club, maybe you could start one, or maybe you could partner with a business school within the university, and they may have some things lined up. Taking a course, a business course, a finance course, an entrepreneurship course is also very beneficial because you can then start learning financial modeling, market assessment, business types of terminology that you may not be learning within your PhD or postdoc, and that'll help give you more of the lingo to speak as you're evaluating opportunities with companies. And then certainly, if you end up interviewing, you're going to be asked constantly about teamwork, collaboration, how you've done well on teams, what hasn't worked well. So finding ways to work in teams, whether it's a research team or a business team, it's still very valuable. And so that's a definitive. You will be asked a lot about experiences outside of just your particular work. I wrote a short blog about what consulting companies look for in talent. So if any of you are interested in this, email me and I can share that with you. It'll give you some additional pointers of what to think about, how to start planning to make yourself competitive in that process.
Fantastic. Lauren, thank you so much. I will go ahead and close the floor for questions at the moment, but if you do have any further questions, I do encourage you to reach out to Lauren and Propel Careers. You can tell that they have a wealth of information available for you, and as well as if you want the slide deck, reach out to her as well. And Lauren, again, thank you so much for your time. And to the audience, thank you for your time as well. It was really nice to be able to spend this hour with you, and I hope that we get the chance to do it again in the future. Thank you so much, Lauren.
So thank you so much also. Thank you all for listening.